This is the February 20th regular meeting of the Durango City Council. The time is 6:34 p.m. We begin with a roll call.
Councilor Bettine.
Here.
Councilor Bricky.
Here.
Councilor Youssef.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Marbury.
Here.
Mayor White.
Here. The first items on the agenda have to do with proclamations. Actually, no proclamations tonight, but we do have a couple of presentations. The first concerns a presentation by the state archaeologist to the city of Durango and for a project in town for whom I see the developer.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor White and Council. It's my pleasure to be here to inform the Council. I think you already know, I think we're informed as part of one of the city manager's weekly reports, but the city did receive, along with Britt Bassett, the developer, and the Hilmers, Barry and Cindy Hilmer, the owners of the property, an award, State Archaeologist Award 2018 for the development of the Arrowhead Ridge subdivision up on the College Mesa. I think as council will recall, that project came through last year. It was a project where we discovered somewhat unexpectedly quite significant cultural resources on the property, and we were able to work at the staff level with the developer, Mr. Bassett, to take this project through the plan development process, and utilizing the plan development process, made some concessions that allowed Britt to achieve what he wanted to get with the project, and also allowed the preservation of those resources up there, which were pretty significant. And so, as part of the 2018 Historic Preservation Conference in Denver, the city was given this award along with the Bassetts, Britt, and the Hilmers. It's a really impressive award, and it's a very prestigious award at the state level as far as archaeology. We've got a little bit of a YouTube video that was prepared by the State Historical Society as part of the presentation that was given up there, and if you'll indulge us, we'll run it. It's only a couple of minutes.
The pit house was, probably 30 feet across. It was in a circle, something like this, and we weren't expecting anything in particular, weren't thinking much about it.
I got a call from Britt Bassett. The city of Durango requested that he have a survey done. He contacted us, and we surveyed the property.
So when I came back to see the progress that he was making, there were colored flags all over the land below, bright as a Christmas tree, and I learned the different colors means this is a pot shard, this is a sherd, this would be remains of an old fire. Then I realized that maybe there really was something going on here.
We found two ancestral Pueblo sites that dated to about the AD 700 to 800 period.
So a couple thousand years ago, a lot of people were living in this small area in Durango, living lives much like we are. There were kids and grandparents, and it all came out in this beautiful archaeological site.
You could totally envision that not only is this a nice place to live now with the lovely view, you could see why people were living here way back at that time.
So this site was probably early on in the cultural evolution of the Pueblos when they just started adopting intensive corn, bean, and squash agriculture.
I got to come up here and take buckets of dirt and run them through the sifter.
It was nice working for Britt because he was very interested in the archaeology. He reconfigured his lots so that he could protect the important part of the site. He was not required by law to do any of this, and he was also concerned about how the local tribes felt about it.
Some of the elders had told us, Mukuchumukanigap, Uva Arature, translation of that. The ancient ones living there, and that was their home. Not very many developers do that. This may give other developers that come across archaeological sites something that they can think about and maybe avoid disturbing those sites.
The city of Durango worked really actively to try to make the preservation of the archaeological site and the development successful. And I think it's really important for us to recognize Mr. Bassett's stewardship of our shared history.
It just didn't seem right to put houses over the place where people had lived like this. We can do this. We can go ahead and develop this great place, and we can preserve the land in a way that I think benefits everybody.
And I just want to reiterate, I mean, none of this would have been possible without Britt's cooperation. He was great through the whole process and just an excellent job. It's been a really great development out there. I don't know if Britt has anything he wants to say, but we wanted to acknowledge the receipt of this award on behalf of the city, Britt and the vendors.
Yes, I just want to say thanks again to the city. I was impressed how this process went through. We've ended up with something I think that's nicer than we started. And I hope sometime this fall, I can invite all of you up to this site so with the unveiling of the artifacts that are boxed up now and held by the archaeologists for research. Hopefully this fall we'll get to open those up and look at them and have a little gathering party at that time. So thanks again, and thanks to the planning staff.
Thank you, Brett.
I think we need to give him a round of
No
applause.
kidding.
Yeah.
I think congratulations all around to the Hilmers, to Mr. Bassett, and to city staff to make this collaboration work. I'm looking forward to see the full development up there. The next item is the presentation of the Terry Fiedler Spirit of Snowdown Award to the City of Durango.
It's my pleasure to introduce to the City Council members of the Snowdown Board of Directors. Chip Lyle, if you would please come up, and others, please join Chip at the podium, and they'd like to make a presentation to the City Council.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Council. Thank you very much for having us this evening. My name is Chip Lyle. I'm the President of the Snowdown Board of Directors. 40 years ago, Snowdown was started here in Durango as a community event, as a cabin fever reliever. And the stated purpose of Snowdown, then as it is now, 40 years later, is fun and commerce. So I hope everybody had fun, and I hope the commerce was good for our community as well. So thank you. We give out 2 awards every year as members of the board to the community. We give out the Spirit of Snowdown Award to one individual in the community every year. We also give out the Spirit of Snowdown Award to an organization or an entity in the community every year. After 40 years, we felt that we needed to create one more award to really show our appreciation for those members in our community that really exemplify the spirit of Snowdown, which is really about community and fun. And we named that award after Terry Fiedler, who is recognized as the founder of Snowdown. We hope to give out this award on a regular basis, but it's not so much about what the individual or the organization has done for Snowdown, it's what they do for the entire community. So after a lot of discussion, we decided that the city of Durango would be the first recipient of the Snowdown Terry Fiedler Award, Spirit of Snowdown. And to us, this represents not just one individual at the city, but everybody in the city that helps year-round plan all the events, including Snowdown specifically year-round. The events department, they're working on the holidays, they're working nights, they're working evenings. So thank you very much to the police department, public safety, everybody that works for the city that helps pull off Snowdown. We thank you very much. And we did specifically award this during Follies to Mike Kelly, who couldn't be here tonight, but this is really for everybody in the city. So thank you very much for everything you do for Snowdown. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Sure, you guys want to put that?
That's a challenge. These things keep coming. I just want to say on behalf of the city, when I read the agenda documentation and saw that the city would be the very first recipient of this award, I was really impressed. Snowdown is one of those things when as soon as you come to Durango, you figure it out. And for me personally, I was at a meeting in Denver and got off the plane, I believe at 5:15 on Friday afternoon, but did make it to the city council float for the parade. Very, very pleased to have made the extra effort. My wife actually came to me, picked me up at the airport with a brand new bow tie to round out the outfit. So I'm really pleased to be part of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your help. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, we're talking about presentations. 2 weeks ago, I announced that at the meeting that I had attended in Denver, the inaugural Colorado Community Symposium, that the city of Durango had received an award Councilor Brookie and I had the pleasure of receiving. This is presented to the City of Durango for its Way to Go Club and the Way to Go Together by the State of Colorado and the Compact of Colorado Communities. And so, having sat on my dining room table for a couple of weeks, I finally managed to bring this to City Hall to deliver to staff for safekeeping.
Thanks, Mayor.
And that's the city manager.
All right, thanks.
Moving on, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and we begin with a reading of the consent agenda.
Item 4.1 is approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of February 6, 2018. 4.2 through 4.5 are discussion and possible action items. 4.2 concerns Resolution R 2018-2, modifying water plant investment fees for the year 2018. 4.3 concerns Resolution R 2018-3, modifying sewer plant investment fees for year 2018. 4.4 concerns an implied consent agreement for water service to 1690 Florida Road. 4.5 concerns Resolution R 2018-4, authorizing additional appropriations to various funds for the 2017 purchasing and contractual commitments. 4.6 is final approval of ordinance O 2018-2, authorizing the conveyance of city-owned property located at 6 Woodland Circle, Durango, Colorado, and declaring an effective date.
Is there any member of the public who wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Mayor, could you remove item 4.3, please?
Okay. Any member of the council? No. Before I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda accepting item 4.3, I will note that there was a clerical error in the staff report for item 4.4 in the text that said the recommendation to the council for approval of this implied consent agreement named a totally different property than the name of the item or the implied consent agreement that we are in fact authorizing to the manager to sign on behalf of the city. Having consulted with the city attorney and the staff, I think it's sufficient to note that the intent of the council is to approve that particular implied consent agenda, the clerical error in the staff report notwithstanding. So with that, I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I will move to approve the consent agenda without 4.3.
Second. May we have a roll call?
Councilor Bettine.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Marbury.
Yes.
Councilor Brookie.
Yes.
Councilor Youssef.
Yes?
Mayor White.
Yes. May we have the petitioner to come to the podium to explain the rationale?
Mayor White, my name is John Simpson. I live at 1831 Crestview Drive. The purpose of a plant improvement fee is to find a nexus so that development pays for development, but no more than that. Plant improvement fees must be very carefully calculated, because if they're too high, developers may sue. But if they're too low, current residents will have to bear an unfair burden due to the impacts of future residents. As explained in the resolution in front of you, in 2014, Wilden completed a financial analysis to determine a fair and reasonable sewer plant improvement fee. Their methodology appears solid. They calculated a plant improvement fee based on what it costs to replace infrastructure, such as a sewer plant. However, they could not have predicted that the sewer plant would cost $64 million. They assumed the cost to replace was $23 million. The result of this estimate being so far off is that our sewer plant improvement fee are much too low, which means current residents are being unfairly burdened with the cost of this, the large cost of this plant. My claim that the sewer plant improvement fee are too low is supported by the State of Colorado Department of Local Affairs, study from 2015 that showed the average plant improvement fee is $4,400 back in 2015. You're getting ready to approve a plant improvement fee of $2,131, which is less than half the average from 3 years ago. It is reasonable to assume that the Durango plant improvement fee should be much more than average when we have a brand new expensive plant out there. You're also aware that we have one of the highest usage fees in the state. Having a below average plant improvement fee does not make sense when we have the state's highest usage fee. The low plant improvement fee increases the burden placed on the families in Durango today. The Wilton study knew this, knew that it was impossible to look into the future very far, which is why they said a third-party rate study should have been completed in 2016 and 2018. In prior discussions of water and sewer, you have steadfastly contended that no logic can be applied to obvious problems like this until a new rate study is done in 2019. Thus, new growth for at least 2 years will be subsidized by current residents. The reasoning for delay is flimsy. If you can't make a decision without an opinion from a third party, please consider asking the expert to look just at the plant improvement structure based on current facts. The Weldon report has the calculation for the plant improvement fee laid out in the report. It just needs updated with the actual numbers rather than estimates. By approving this plant improvement fee that's in front of you now, the current residents must pay more for the sewer plant than is fair. Mayor White?
Might I ask staff for a response to that remark?
Mayor White, Bud Lloyd, Director of City Operations. So the reason for the increase in the amount that was chosen for this increase is part of what we've looked at is through the Engineering News Record, which is publications put out, and they study the cost of construction through 20 metropolitan cities and come up with an index for the cost of construction. And based on that is what we have used to make our inflationary increases in plant investment fees. And the inflationary increase this year is 3.498%, and that's why we are recommending the current amount. It amounts to about a $200 increase in new development for single-family homes with a 3/4 inch tap or meter. So that's why we are recommending the current increase. And as stated, we are doing another rate increase or rate study in 2019 that will address these as well.
I had a question. You said it's an increase. So Mr. Simpson seemed to think that this was a decrease.
No.
That's what he said. It was a decrease in the plant fees. Just a minute. I have a question for Levi. So this plant fee actually is an increase, like an inflationary increase?
That's correct. Increase of 3.498%.
Okay. And we have always said that new development should pay their way, right?
That's correct.
So I can't find the logic of how I am paying for new development with the sewer bond. I can't follow it.
Well, the other thing that I would point out is that these fees are only paid by new development. So if you were to remodel a house, you would not be paying into this. It's only new development, new construction. If you were to increase the capacity of the house and have to go to a new meter size, new tap into the main, you would be subject to this fee, but it's not a fee on current ratepayers.
Okay, thank you. That's my question.
Discussion? Any other? Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Any other discussion from the council?
Well, what I heard Mr. Simpson say was comparing the cost of this fee, plant investment fee, which is the first time sign up, if you will, for a sewer tap in this case, was not enough compared to the high rate that we've established to amortize the sewer treatment plant. And he's proposing that it should be a much higher, maybe perhaps double is what I heard, plant investment fee to reduce the monthly fee that we now charge customers, which was also, the monthly fee was a product of the Wildan report as well. So what I know in the construction business, and we saw it in this room full of people talking about an energy code update that was going to cost $1,000, which was extreme value to, in my mind, to the long-term payback of a person making that investment in a code upgrade to their home. And we got huge community pushback for that. That cost, as was documented by everybody from the Homes Fund to the
Yes, I commented also about that. So
Well,
what you're saying right now is that
So what he's proposing is that
You
council
raise it?
should lower the cost of the monthly fee and charge developers twice as much for the sewer treatment plant, or for the plant investment fee, which ultimately could be used to go to the sewage treatment plant. And I would say two things. One, there's not enough money in the development PIF fee to play for any sewer treatment plant. And two, we know that any number like anything above $200, which is this proposal, is going to encounter extreme pushback from the community at large for escalating the high cost of housing in our community. And so how can we get new units and overall reduce the cost of housing in our community if we have a plant investment fee
it's double.
that has to be paid at the time of permitting every new piece of construction in our community? So in my mind, although the Wildan report, the one thing is that they didn't anticipate the cost of, and fully anticipate the cost of the ultimate cost of the sewage treatment plant in their report. I think their logic is sound, is that the best way to amortize that is with increased fees. And we don't have the highest fees anywhere. But we do have, I know from working in other jurisdictions, that our plant investment fees are right in there, and probably the highest, well, certainly higher than Cortez or any of our immediately adjacent communities, but certainly right up there with some of the more expensive communities in the state. So,
I would not be in favor of doubling this plant investment fee.
but I think we'd kind of a huge criticism from the community for putting homes out of reach of the average taxpayer in our community.
It's my comment.
Any additional comments? No. I would observe that ideally we would have the opportunity to do the rate study this year, but asking staff to manage that at the same time as they're bringing in this very, very expensive capital project is simply impractical. As it is, the proposal before the council is to make a calculated increase in the planned investment fees. If it's insufficient, it will be another year before we know that, but I think that it's worth noting Mr. Simpson's remarks and also understanding that it ties to our housing plan as well as to our utility fee structure. So it's, I think, yet one more item that goes into the hopper as we look forward to our re-estimating the needed fees. And hopefully, we heard a couple of weeks ago about the potential for a new water treatment plant on College Mesa in collaboration with La Plata Archuleta Water District, and the hope that we can move that project along to provide reasonable assurance for the community going forward that we have our water supplies. Mr. Simpson has objected to that proposal. I think the council has agreed, and we received strong reaffirmation from Bruce Whitehead, the director of the Southwestern Water Conservation District, that is a prudent way to plan for our future. So I appreciate Mr. Simpson's input on these issues. He is knowledgeable and has done a lot of homework, and we appreciate that. If we could be doing that this year, I'd be happy, but it's going to take another year before staff is in a position to be able to tackle that piece of the project. With that, I will ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the inflationary adjustment to the sewer plant investment fees for the 2018 year.
Second.
May we have a roll call?
Counselor Berkey?
Yes.
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Marbury?
Yes.
Mayor Wyatt?
Yes. We move on to public participation. This is a section of the agenda that is reserved for public comment on items that are not otherwise open for public input on the agenda. As we've been talked among the counselors that it might be useful at this time to have a preface concerning the item on the agenda, which is number 9.2.3, which is a hearing on the annexation of Lake Nighthorse. And so there will be an opportunity to comment on the annexation, but the certainly emails we've received are talking largely about the recreation plan. And as we'll be announcing during during council reports in action, there are a couple of meetings coming up next week to collect public input about the recreation plan. But the recreation plan is dead in the water unless the city annexes the property. If we wish to open the Lake Nighthorse for any kind of recreation by April 1st, the council needs to go through this hearing tonight, direct the city attorney to prepare the associated ordinance, and then we have, at our 2 meetings in March, we will have successive first and second readings of that ordinance. And I believe I calculated that the ordinance will go into effect on April the 30th, or March the 30th, which is exactly 2 days before the projected opening date of Lake Nighthorse Recreation. So this is a very important item, but the issue of recreation isn't the subject of tonight's agenda. So with that, I would invite people who wish to comment on other items on the agenda to come forward, and with the customary 5-minute time limit for any one individual, or 10 if they're representing more than 2.
Mayor and members of City Council, I'm Lisa Eisenberg, and I am the second house on the right in Elavita subdivision. And I think we're going to become familiar faces, I think. You know, we just wanted to come and continue to make sure that we are making a presence and stressing the importance of keeping the April 1st deadline that we've been told. You know, we've attended the last month's City Council meeting, the City County Commission meeting last week, and then Hillcrest meeting on Thursday night as well, and then tonight. And, you know, I can say from personal experience, I've been here 5 years. I came from St. Louis, but I'm the first and only house. I moved in the vacant home that was there, the original home. You know, I went from having people that were sleeping in the home and sleeping on the back porch to trying to get in my house in the middle of the night to really improving and making a really wonderful subdivision. And what started out as a few homeless people here and there has turned into, at any given time, you know, driving across 9th Street Bridge to my house, 28, 30 people, congregating in our driveways, in the street, in the court, in our landscaping that we as an HOA pay for and maintain. You know, 3 a.m., people yelling, having conversations with themselves, walking down the street, waking us up. To, you know, I have 3 kids, and my son, as well as the gentleman over there, his son, both of them threatened by a man with a knife who was gonna kill them and kill our dogs. You know, and then I called the police and I'm told there's not really anything I can do because it's not, you know, it's in the street, that's public, you're allowed to carry a knife, but you're not allowed to threaten my 15-year-old son. To also having then, you know, my other neighbor who has 2 young daughters, and then she hears this kind of drunken, disorderly man on her driveway having a conversation with her 4-year-old daughter. You know, these are things that originally when it first started, it was just a couple people. It's just gotten out of control, and they're different types of people. And there are some genuinely great men and women who, mostly men, you know, who claim to be outdoorsmen. They don't want to live indoors. They don't want to live in a shelter. They really want to be outdoorsmen. They've chosen, some of them are vets, they've chosen this because of past trauma or whatever. But then there's others that are just genuinely taking advantage of it. I had a friend visit from Aspen. He said, oh, we don't tolerate that. They get off the bus in Aspen, we say, oh, here's a bus voucher to Grand Junction and here's a meal. And I said, yeah, give it about 2 weeks and they come down to Durango. I'll take a picture, I'll send it to you. You know, that's what we're known for. And these you know, the men who come and, you know, we know who the regulars are and we know who the new ones are. You get to know them by name and face. And they'll tell you that everybody says, go to Durango, that's the place to go. And, you know, I think it's sad. It affects our businesses downtown, it affects our tourism, and it's only getting worse. And I think, you know, the lady sitting next to me, she lives up by Walmart, and she's getting it as well. In her driveway, it's spreading, you know. So I think this isn't a problem that is gonna be easily solved. There's short-term goals and there's long-term goals. And this April 1st deadline, we as Alameda Subdivision, we are really firm on this April 1st deadline that we want that camp moved. If it's not moved, we have to have the trailhead closed and an alternate route given for the folks to walk back and forth. I work at Mercy, I'm a nurse practitioner. I am a bleeding heart, I tell you, like, but I can't, I mean, I live there. And, you know, the VP, the brand new VP of Mercy just moved here. I just got out of a meeting with her. And she said, oh, we looked at that house right there in the corner. She said, and my real estate agent said, I would never live here. She said, don't ever live here. She said, it's actually dangerous. And she's brand new to town. And so my neighbors dropped her house price almost $100,000. $50,000 just a week and a half ago. Not because she's, you know, desperate to get out of her house. She's just in the situation where she wants to move. But what does that do to the rest of us who've really invested our lives, our families, and we want to be in this community? So we want to make sure that, you know, we're here and we're not going away. So, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Eisenberg.
I think it might be important to note that I agree with everything you're saying. I mean, with the exception of the comment about Aspen, I mean, it's been illegal for many, many years to hand a person a bus ticket and tell them to get out of town. That will not happen in our community. I think our city attorney would counsel us otherwise.
I'm not saying that that's what we have to do. I'm just
But,
saying,
I mean,
shunting people to us.
I don't believe it really happens in Aspen. They might talk about it, but it doesn't really happen, or else they would be. But the thing the most important thing is we have made that request of the county to take steps towards moving this camp. We don't think we need to be the recipient of a relocated camp and take long-term responsibility for that camp in the city of Durango, anywhere in the city of Durango that's similarly unpopular and problematic. And quite honestly, it's not ours to shut down because it is on county property. So this April 1st date, we've made that statement. You've heard that statement. The county has to figure out how to deal with it. And between now and then, that's a very difficult challenge for them. So that's all I can say about that is that, you know, we will continue to support that effort, their effort to do exactly what we've asked them to do.
I have a comment. Several of us attended the Thursday night meeting, and I just want to remind all residents that the city of Durango enforces no camping. So that's in our parks. We enforce it. We have asked the sheriff to enforce no camping. Remember, that is county property. We are trying to work with the sheriff and with the county commissioners, but it hasn't been a straight course. Okay, we have advocated for shelters, not camps. And that a shelter does mean that some type of a building would have to be opened up, whether it's a city or a county building or the fairgrounds or the pavilion or churches to step forward, I'm not sure. But we need some partners in this. Government can't solve all of the problems that social problems are we are seeing in Durango. And I understand your frustration, and I appreciate every meeting that you have attended. I know Alavita has been at the table for well over a year. And I just want you to know the City Council stands with you.
Any other comments from council?
I would just comment that the council, I'm sure you're aware of this, but all 5 members of this council spent 7 hours last week together just on that topic alone. And so certainly we agree that that issue has reached a magnitude in our community of certain urgency. And I just want you to know we spared no available time to try to come to some solutions to especially help that neighborhood. So I want you to know we're working on it as hard as we can. And I have a great deal of hope and conviction that we're getting pretty close to having some resolution for you guys, because you certainly have felt the brunt of the impact. So
I have a couple of additional comments that I will say for council reports. Does anybody else wish to speak to the council tonight?
Okay. I'm Melinda Nelson. I'm at 26072 Highway 160 over by Walmart. We've had issues with the homeless for the last 3 years. Calling the sheriff's deputy. I've actually had to have the city police involved a few times. The sanitary napkins, the people defecating on our property, the trash, 50-gallon bags of trash is just unbearable that I have to go pick up on, I would have to say, a monthly basis.
Can you tell me, are you in the city of Durango?
We're in the county.
You're in the county?
But we're right next door to the city. Dance the Rockies, the school, Tractor Supply, Walmart, they're all city. We're set up against the river. We're still county, but we are in the process of becoming the city. And so, do I have no right now?
Oh, no, I just couldn't figure out where you were living.
We're right there, but we're still county. And the amount of taxes that we are forced to have to pay and what these people are, the soup kitchen that provides for these people, the vouchers that they get from the Durango Humane Society thrift shop, and they'll go get a beautiful comforter, lay it on my property, use it one time, and then they just leave it there. I pick up 4 or 5 comforters at a time. Thankfully, we have a dumpster that we all go in together, and I put the tents. I can't tell you how many tents I have given away. And this winter has probably been it's been a mild winter. So it's just constant. It's a constant.
And have you talked to the county commissioners about this?
No.
I think you should.
Where do I need to go to?
10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, that's when the county commissioners meet. I think that they need, I love hearing you, don't get me wrong.
Okay.
But I think this is shared with the county commissioners because they need to hear it as well.
Oh, it's horrible. And for us to keep providing for these, we're paying for it. And it's not right. It's wrong. These people need to get out and earn their way. It's disgusting. Okay, so how do I get a hold of them?
Right down the street. Right down here is the county building. Joanne Spina is the county manager. They have meetings Tuesday mornings. I can't tell you exactly what the date is. Maybe some of my fellow counselors will, but I would suggest that you go and you attend their county commissioners meeting and speak your piece.
Or they have office hours. Any of the 3 county commissioners would be available to talk to you.
And I believe the generic email for the Board of County Commissions is bocc@ci.county.co.us. Is that right? Yeah, cilaplata.co.us. And I'm sure you can find that on the county website.
It's in the Herald every day with our phone numbers as well, so I know it's there.
Anyone else wish to speak to the council tonight? See a couple of heads looking around, but no one standing up. Seeing that, I will move on to council reports and actions.
I'll go first if it's okay. Yep. Couple of public meetings next week that the mayor alluded to relative to recreation on Lake Night Horse. The first one is on February 27th. It's an open house at 4 p.m. at the rec center. And then there's a community meeting at 5 p.m. For your opportunity to kind of discuss that. As I'm sure many people are aware, there's a lot of debate over whether or not we're going to have certain types of motorized use at Lake Night Horse. And so that's one of the opportunities. And then the second opportunity is March 1st, also at the rec center from 2 to 6. It's a public workshop on the motorized and non-motorized use and trails, et cetera, and other types of potential future uses. So hope that those concerned citizens will show up on both sides of that issue.
I'll go next, that's all right. At the library tomorrow night, February 21st at 6:30, will be the Durango Character Districts, and I will be there. Maybe some of my other counselors will also. It's talking about the North Main potential redevelopment and also Camino. You know, when you look down the road a few years from now, I suspect there will be businesses that will be redeveloping, and so the city council would like to look and get your ideas about what your vision will be. I'm on the library board, I'm a liaison for it, and I just wanted to share some things that our library does. They send out materials to daycare and preschools. They send out free materials to the homebound. They also help the Durango Adult Education Center with English language learners with types of information. I wrote down that Sunshine Gardens and Four Corners also benefit from some of the materials that are taken to the nursing home. So we have so much, we're so blessed to be here in Durango. Books and Brews is another part of the library. It's on February the 26th, and Maria's is having a book signing and a meet the author. And it's about Crazy Horse, and his family will be there. And that's on February the 27th. So I find that there's so many interesting things to do in Durango.
Was that 26th or 27th? I think you said both.
26th is Books and Brews, and 27th is the Maria's book signing and the lecture. I'm also on the Natural Lands Board, and anytime that new trails are being proposed to be cut, there's always neighborhood meetings going on. So what I always suggest is go online, look at Virtual City Hall. Click, take that survey about parks and recreation, about what you want to see happening in the future, and also click, go online for the public art. There's 3 types of public art. They're going to go in the medians, whether you like it or not. There's 3 artists, and they're local, so don't be that person that complains after the fact. Doesn't work up here. So make those counts. In fact, when I looked today, only 415 Durango City residents had gone online about the art, and 700 were from outside the city. And I guarantee you there'll be 30,000 people complaining about it. So make your voice count. Thank you.
Okay, I am on the La Plata Economic Alliance Board. There is a manufacturing forum tomorrow at 4 p.m. at Ska Brewery. That's February 21st. The manufacturing sector in our community is alive and well. Wages are going up. Businesses are improving. In 2016, there was 115 full-time employees in the manufacturing community, and they are expecting 30 to 60 new jobs in that primary level of employment in 2018. So that's good news. If you want more information, you can go to this manufacturing forum tomorrow. I'm also on the multimodal board, and fabulous graphics on our Bike to Work posters. Bike to Work Day is Friday this week. Hopefully the weather will cooperate and we can all get out of our cars, get in our e-bikes and hit the trails. Meet in front of Studio And from 7 to 9 a.m. Again, that's Friday. And then lastly, a couple more things. I had the wonderful opportunity of meeting with Cub Scouts Pack 502 and talking all about what we do as a city council, what our responsibilities are and why on earth we would do it for the amount of money that we made. I tried to give them some good answers, but even more important for me was I asked them what they're doing in their jobs, and they told me that they are doing food drives, picking up trash, making future leaders, being good role models, and bringing joy. I thought, wow, we can all learn from that. So what a pleasure it was to meet with them. And then lastly, I wanted to just do a plug for Mountain Bike Specialists. They are having their 50th year anniversary celebration on March 1st, opening in March of 1968, celebrating 50 years of service in this community. I think it's literally becoming a historical landmark. You can stop in and visit them, say congratulations between 12 and 6, and they'll have refreshments. And that's all.
I'm just reminded my youngest son is a product of Cub Scout Pack 502.
And you too, right?
And no, I'm
Cub Scout something?
That was
Eagle
wait,
Scout.
Eagle.
Eagle, okay.
It's a little more advanced.
We went from Cub Scout Pack 502 to the White House for 5 years. So it's a good breeding ground for leaders.
It really is.
I'm on the Airport Commission. I just wanted to kind of, in the realm of updates for fee structures and things like that, wanted to just let folks know that the airport, we've commissioned a new study, which would be the rates and charges analysis and the revenue enhancement for the airport, so that we can take care of, come into the less than dark ages relative to what we charge the airlines to come into our airport. And this isn't an attempt to increase the rates, the airline rates coming in and out of town, and it won't have that ultimate effect, but it does affect how much, what kind of opportunities we can provide the customer out there. So this will be done over the next 8 months. It's being done by WSP, which is Parkins Brinkerhoff, for those of you that might be more familiar with that name. National firm that's, and they will be actually negotiating with United and American Airlines and trying to help us bring another carrier in if that's at all possible. So that'll be done over the next 8 months. It's another one of those areas of business that the city embarks in that just like structures for more fun things like sewer and water that we're keeping current with national trends.
And I wanted to remind everyone, when you do fly, there's a survey out at the airport that would really help the airport get information from you, what you think, and fill it out. But Mayor, if it's all right, I've asked the city manager to give us a sales tax and a lodger's tax report.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Marbury. Before I get into the report, I'd just like to clarify something Councilor Brookie said about PAC 502. I think you said your son went from that to the White House. It was the previous White House he worked at. I'd like to clarify that for the record.
Clarification. Thank you for that. Yeah.
He might appreciate that.
Yeah.
Same building, different
Tenant.
tenant, yeah. So what I'm reporting on is the January monthly tax report. And before I give you the numbers, maybe I can just explain how this information is processed and what we do at year end and where you can find the information. Everything I'm about to present is online, and it's online in a lot more detail. So if you want to find out by sector, these are special codes. You can look at retail, you can look at auto, you can see all those broken down. You can also see by location in the city where the activity is, how all the sales tax is distributed throughout the city. And so this report is called the January monthly tax report. So this would reflect the sales that occurred in December. And December is our biggest month. So the sales occur in December. The merchants collect the taxes and they remit those in January. And it takes us about 10 days into February to add all that up and prepare the report. So every month is the same. So the next month would be January sales, we'll report that at the council in March. These numbers reflect December sales. December sales for sales tax were down 0.1%. And lodger's tax was down 13.2%. And I think we can attribute that mostly to weather. December activity is high compared to the other months for two reasons. The holiday season spending occurs, and weather brings in a lot of tourists. We had no snow, and some of the hotels experienced some cancellations. So what happens with the December numbers, finance department has to collect all this information, and there's a lot of details that the finance staff has to chase down, and we put all that together and prepare a report that is presented to the auditors. The city has an independent auditor hired by the council that looks through all of our records. So the sales tax is just one part of that audit. And that, as soon as that preliminary number becomes available, we report that to the city council. And for the public, we need to know how much revenue in total was collected for the year. Sales tax is the biggest component. So if you're a viewer of this program, you'll know that I only report on sales tax, use tax, lodger's tax, because that is the driver for everything. But there are a lot of additional revenues that get reported as well. And we look for trends. That's one of the things that we've been watching over the years. So these numbers will tell us were the revenue projections in the budget accurate? Were we close to hitting those numbers? Were we over those numbers? Were we under those numbers? The other side of the ledger would be the expenses, and we typically will spend in the general fund somewhere between 96 and 98% of the total appropriation. So there always are savings in the general fund. And during the year, when there's a special situation, we come back to the council for a supplemental appropriation. That doesn't happen very often, but it happens a couple times a year, where the money that we're requesting for the supplemental was, and for an item that we could not anticipate at the time that we did the budget. So we start working on budget at the staff level in July. It goes to the council in September. You spend September, October, November, first part of December working on the budget. And as you know, things change, and there are things we didn't know in July that we have to present to you in December when they become evident to us. So there's more to report every month. While these numbers are negative, I would caution the public to follow these numbers. We projected no increase in sales tax in 2018. And I wouldn't say that 1 month represents a trend, but it's always been our philosophy that we would go to the council and try to make small changes early in the year. Small changes in the year, early in the year, result in big changes cumulatively. So we don't wait for the crisis. We try to anticipate things. And I think this year we're starting off a little bit in the hole, but we can control expenses, and we can be a little optimistic for summer tourism to make up for the winter.
Well, thank you. I know people talk about we need more policemen. City Council has more policemen downtown than we ever have had, and also on the Animas River Trail. How do we pay for policemen? It's through this sales tax, basically, through the general revenue. The library and the senior center also receive money based on sales tax. So does the parks and recreation departments. Paving streets comes out of the general revenue. Fixing things that get broken comes out of the general revenue. So I'm on my stand here. When you shop at Amazon, you hurt the police department. When you go to Farmington, you hurt getting streets paved. when you spend money someplace else, and I know I can't buy everything in Durango. I do understand that. But I will say that I certainly tried during the Christmas season to spend every dollar. In fact, I did spend every dollar I had locally. So I'm going to challenge the rest of you out there. I want you to really, I want you to challenge yourself to think about how easy it is to go on Amazon and hit that button. And when you call for the police department and you think we need more policemen, I want you to remember that. Thank you.
I hope it was all the money you had to spend for Christmas and not all the money you had.
Oh, no, I spent every dollar on my grandkids. What can I say?
I've got a number of announcements. First, as usual, just remind folks of my weekly office hour, Thursday mornings, 9 o'clock, coffee with the mayor at the Steaming Bean. I missed last week, and I apologize to anyone who may have come on looking for me. Our breakfast meeting with the county commissioners took priority. It might happen again, so I urge everybody to look at the city calendar or the summary thereof that appears in the Herald on the weekend edition. I want to mention to follow up on the Public Art Commission and the selection of artists. That selection is going to be made the artists for the 160-550 intersection medians, not the site, the infamous site, will be made on the basis of public input. And the survey on Virtual City Hall closes next Friday, this Friday, the 23rd. So if you have not yet gotten on to Virtual City Hall to cast your vote, please do. A couple of recent events out of the ordinary that kind of comes with being the mayor. Last week on Monday, I attended a meeting to describe the American Indian Measurable Success Program. This is a collaborative program among Fort Lewis, the local school districts, to really pay additional personalized attention to Native American students. And it has already, in a just space of 2 years, yielded significant improvement in the number of Native students who are taking AP classes at the high schools and going on to post-secondary education. 4 students spoke, 2 of them who are seniors at Durango High School, and 2 who are first-year students at Fort Lewis, who all of whom were very articulate and made a really great case for that program. I specifically invited 2 of the two Durango High School students to talk to their peers and solicit opportunities to apply to the city councils, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Commission, and the Youth Engagement Program. There's a lot of social stratification among our youth, as there is in the community, and we get very few minority applications. We get the cream of the crop from the student council, but not a wide representation. And so I think this is an opportunity both to increase the overall success of those students in the high school and beyond, and also to engage them more in the deliberations of the city. A couple of the other things that I had on my list have been talked about. On Saturday, I represented the city council at the homelessness forum at the fairgrounds. It was an extremely informative discussion about the overall landscape of homelessness and how it manifests in Durango and La Plata County. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to meet again with the keynote speaker, Don Burns from the Burns Center on Poverty and Homelessness at the University of Denver, along with the organizers of the symposium. They are really trying to engage the community in this larger issue. I've written a partial summary of that meeting for my upcoming column that will appear in the Durango Herald this weekend. As you've heard, there are a whole lot of meetings coming up. The other councilors have shared them. I would urge you always to go to durangogov.org, and right on the front page, you will find the news with the announcements, a lot of the upcoming events, such as tip a cop for the Special Olympics that's coming up this week. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be have the pleasure as the mayor to participate in the grand reopening of Albertsons after their renovation. On Thursday evening, there's green drinks at Carver's. And as we've already heard on, or have we? I think we saved this for Dick. On Thursday, March 1st, this is the first of 4 community, whole community meetings to talk about engagement with the city about setting priorities. People who attend the workshop at 5 to 7 at the library will hear about the overall budgetary situation of the city. The manager said our sales taxes are flat, our expenses continue to rise, and there is an operational issue there that affects how much money we have to fix the streets or put policemen on the beat. We also have identified something like $200 million worth of capital needs, such as the fact that the police station is a very old building that was never designed to be a police station, and they're kind of coming out the seams. And if we ever wanted to expand the police force, we scarcely have room to do it. There are a lot of capital needs, including catching up and getting ahead on our street maintenance and so on. I urge citizens to please get involved in this process. It's going to go on for the next 4 months. There's going to be a virtual city hall survey later on. There's going to be a scientifically sampled survey that some of you may receive. We really need your input, because otherwise, without knowing the priorities of the community, there is no way that we can go forward and make prudent decisions for the fiscal future of the city. So it's really, really important to be engaged. The other upcoming meeting that's important to announce is that our next city council meeting will be on a Monday night, not Tuesday. Tuesday night, 2 weeks from now, is March 6th. It is the evening of the political caucuses for 2018. And so, as we often do with the case of special events that conflict with a council meeting, we are going on this occasion to have our regular council meeting on Monday night. So if you're interested in attending the council meeting, or either watching in live or watching it on television, please remember it's Monday night on March 5th, not Tuesday, March 6th. And finally, speaking of surveys, the San Juan Basin Health Department is conducting a community health assessment, and they're trying to figure out, okay, where is the overall state of the health of our community, and what do we, the public health department, have to do to go forward strategically. It's very much analogous to what the city's planning to do. They have a survey that's available online. Go to sjbpublichealth.org and click on health assessment. They say it'll take about 15 minutes. It's going to be going on for a while. This assessment is going to go on for a number of months. It's also a very important process for the community. So I hope people will engage in that. And with that, we can move on to other parts of the agenda. We have several public hearings scheduled for tonight. The first one is a legislative and policy-related hearing. It's a public hearing to consider revisions to portions of Article 3 of Chapter 24 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Durango regarding parking administration and regulations. Staff has informed us that this is being continued until that March 5th meeting. I believe we need a formal resolution to that effect.
A motion, yes.
Motion to that.
I'll make a motion to continue until March 5th, 2018, the hearing to consider revisions to the portions of Article 3, Chapter 24 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Durango regarding parking administration and regulations.
I'll second.
And we have a roll call.
Councilor Bateen?
Yes.
Councilor Brookie?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Marbury?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. The next 3 are quasi-judicial hearings, and these are situations in which the council essentially acts in a judicial capacity. These are very important hearings. All input into the hearings must occur in the public eye to be a part of the official record, because this basically, it's like a judge's decision about how this applies to some individual or some property. The first one is a public hearing to consider an abandonment of city-owned right-of-way for a portion of East 30th Street, east of Main Avenue. This also is, staff has requested continuation to March 5th. So if I may have the associated motion.
Mayor, I move to continue the public hearing to consider the abandonment of city-owned right-of-way for a portion of East 30th Street, east of Main Avenue, to March 5.
Second. May we have a roll call?
Counselor Berkey?
Yes.
Counselor Marbury?
Yes.
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. And finally, we get to some action. Public hearing to consider the Mercury Village Lot 4 preliminary plan development. Ms. Jamison.
Good evening, Council. Savannah Jamison, Community Development. This is a preliminary development plan for Mercury Village, Lot 4. For Tap River, this will be a food hall and tap hall. Mercury Village, Lot 4, located along Mercury Village Drive, along the Animas River and Animas River Trail. So it will be visible from 550 as well as the river. Zoning, it is in a PD zone district. It is the Mercury Village Planned Development Zone, and it is also in the River Corridor Overlay District. Uses other than office and retail could be approved for this planned development as long as they had an approved conceptual plan. So they did bring the conceptual plan to City Council in December, and City Council unanimously voted to approve the conceptual plan development. Planning Commission also reviewed the conceptual plan as well as the Design Review Board, and both unanimously approved or recommended approval for the conceptual plan development. The next step for this was bringing forward a preliminary plan development. Planning Commission reviewed this at their meeting on January 22nd, and they voted to recommend approval to City Council with the condition that 6 bike spaces be covered. This was to be able to meet the parking requirements for the project. It meets all of the required bike parking, and it meets all of the vehicle parking requirements except for 1 space. And if they cover 6 bike parking spaces, that will count as 1 vehicle parking space. So then they'll meet the parking. Design Review Board reviewed and approved the color palette. That was one of the things that was added in the preliminary plan development. Also, they added another tower element, which I'll show in the schematics. This is the site plan. Really hard to see on this, sorry. So there will be parking to the north and the south to access the food hall. The big part of this is there is a spur coming off the Animas River Trail, and they're going to have an entrance right along that spur, and also the bike parking will be right there. So hopefully it will encourage a lot of bike users to this. And so this is, it says site plan's not. This is just a few sketches of it, and I'll show greater detail. This is facing the river. So as you can see, a lot of decks, a lot of open space to encourage outdoor use, a lot of natural materials, and also they'll be using recycled materials, so it will be the containers. And those were 2 vertical elements as well. Those were, last time the Planning Commission saw this in December, they said, oh, maybe another of the containers could be vertical, so they did add that to their design. I believe there will be 9 restaurants that will be here, and then there'll be a tap room on the lower level as well as the upper level. And then this is along the Mercury Village Drive as well. And then again, another view from Animas River Trail. It's so great. One of our strongest assets in the city of Durango is our river, and we're very excited to have a project that really addresses and engages with the river as well as the river trail. So staff reviewed this. against the Land Use and Development Code as well as the Commercial Use Design Guidelines and had 2 recommendations, and these went to Planning Commission. One is that the roof be a muted earth tone. This comes out of the Commercial Use Design Guidelines. And as the applicant addressed the Planning Commission in January, the roof will not be very visible, especially if there is any development to the west, which is proposed. And also they will most likely use solar panels on the roof as well. So when Planning Commission made the recommendation to City Council, they recommended approval with the condition that 6 bicycle spaces be covered and not that the roof be a muted earth tone. So that is staff's recommendation as well. And the applicants are here to address any questions.
Any questions from council for Ms. Jameson?
Just a quick one. In reference to your comment about the applicant planning to use solar panels, which I think the mayor recommended when we first saw this, in lieu of the coloration on the roof. How does that work in the process that one or the other happens on down the line here?
Did they either do the solar panels or they don't?
Or the coloration comes back into play, I guess. If they choose not to do the solar panels, do we revisit the coloration of the roof issue?
The Plan Commission didn't make that decision just on the solar panels. They also made it on the fact of where it will sit. The building, you won't see the roof that much, and also there most likely will be development to the west side, so it won't be as visible. It wasn't just based on the solar panels.
Okay, thank you.
I had two questions, one of which was how many bike parking places are there total? I think the documentation was ambiguous, whether it was six more or there were already 6. And then the related thing is when I looked at the sketch of the entrance off the bike path, it looked to me like there were 12 slots.
They are required to, I believe it's 6 spaces that they are required to have, and then it would be 6 additional that would be required to be covered.
Okay, that's what I
So that's-
thought, but I wasn't.
In addition to, yeah.
I thought it was worth asking because if it was only 6 total with a facility that's meant to draw from the river trail, that didn't seem like enough. So I think that's a great addition. And my other question concerned the color palette, because I know members of the Planning Commission raised some concern about this, although they didn't do anything in their conditions. Was the DRB review of the color palette after the Planning Commission meeting?
Yes, it was after that, and they unanimously voted approval for the color palette.
Okay, because that was an issue I was going to raise to say, and perhaps defer to the DRB, but if they've already considered it, they're the experts in terms of the architectural design and how this fits into the landscape. So I think that I'm happy to hear that.
I'm just trying to figure out talk about parking, the preliminary site plan still shows the bike path coming down like it's been discussed, and then the long parking arrangement, and which kind of falls off the edge of the cliff there. So I'm trying to figure out at preliminary plan stage here if that's been resolved, or, and knowing that I'm not a big fan of parking, but as long as we still have parking requirements, how does that really work?
So this is a restaurant use, no drive-in or drive-through, so it requires 1 parking space for 75 square feet of customer access area. And Top River's customer access area will require 67 vehicle parking spaces and 6 bicycle parking spaces. The applicant has met the bike parking requirement of the 6 spaces and will meet the vehicle parking requirement with 66 vehicle spaces, so there's 66 in those 2 lots total. And a bicycle parking reduction, replacing 1 required vehicle parking space with 6 additional covered bicycle spaces. So there'll be 66 vehicles and then 12 bicycle parking total. Is that what you're asking me?
Exactly. As I mentioned in the last time we saw this, it hasn't changed much, as there's probably a 30-foot grade differential there. So,
We have had engineering look at this, and I didn't.
Maybe we can ask the applicant.
Yeah.
Any other questions for staff? In that case, I will open the public hearing and invite the applicants and/or the representatives to come forward.
Mayor, Council, my name is Ed Colleen. I live at 7954 Falls Creek, Maine, Durango.
Janet Wiley, the architect for the project.
Mayor, can I start with a basic question?
Well, I want to,
Okay.
first, do you have a presentation that you want to make or comments, or do you simply want to take questions from council?
I think we can just take questions from council, if that's
That's
okay.
fine. You know, I think we always give you the opportunity if you want to make any additional presentation beyond what the staff has provided.
I think I believe your packets have everything, or they should have everything, but yeah, if there are questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Okay.
I just wanted to start with, before we get into too many specific details, I just want to ask you if you could comment a little bit on this business model. It's such a unique approach, other than your typical eating establishment. So how did you arrive at this type of business model in our community?
Well, my wife and I own a restaurant currently here in Durango, and we expanded to Albuquerque. And Albuquerque has a project called Green Jeans, which is 100% recycled shipping containers. That is basically a food hall. It's more of an outdoor business model, but if you go up into Denver, there are several indoor food hall models. And it really kind of struck me as interesting because it was a way for the operators, it was a way for a development to be put together where you could feature local operators because you didn't have as large of a footprint or as big of a risk for the operator. And you could all put them together with a central tap room so that it was almost like really a community of people operating in a place for the community to gather. And if you go up into Denver, you can see there's 3 or 4 right now that are developed. There's 2 more on the drawing boards of these food halls, and they're being done kind of across the city in different areas and demographics. And that's how we came up with the idea of, and then we looked at our market and said, well, where here in Durango would it make sense? And there is a definite lack of local operators, at least on the south end of town, and a need for that. And this site gave us an opportunity to do something with the river, which there's not a lot of food that plays to the river. So kind of that combination made us pursue this.
Just one more quick follow-up to that question. Do you have an idea of what operators would be involved with your project?
Yes, we do, but this is public record.
Okay. Well, it'll be fun to
So
find out.
we have actually quite a bit of interest. Like what I can answer is we have quite a bit of interest from local operators.
Okay.
To locate in the food hall.
Excellent. Specifics you guys can ask now.
Well, thanks, and I have been to Green Jeans in Albuquerque. It's a pretty cool little place, and they don't have much parking there either, by the way, and nor do they need it. But so anyway, I was just following up on my earlier question, which is it's a hillside sloping site, and the parking lot is long and rectangular, like parking lots tend to be, and goes out I don't know exactly how many feet, but is that curable, or is in a future in the next phase, or is that how are we going to?
Which end are you?
It'd be the northerly end, or the
more like northeast.
Yeah, he's looking at that.
Yeah, the upper end.
So the upper end.
Across the bike trail. And
so far, based on our preliminary engineering, we're going to be positive for soils on the site. So we intentionally try to keep the development as low as possible because of the fact that the site is elevated significantly above the river. The challenge with doing dimension parking stalls that we need to create is that there was no way to really do it and fit it on the site without going that far north. We have to do our detention on the south end, and we've actually moved our detention from a detention basin to a swale, but probably what you can't see on that site plan is on the southern end, there's a 16-inch water line that the city has that runs at an angle up, and that goes right across the southerly corner of our building. And then on the northerly end, we have the bike path, which is an easement owned by the city, and that comes and kind of puts us right there. So the only thing we could do on either ends of this was parking. in answering your question, there's not really a way to address it in the sense of being able to shrink the parking without losing stalls.
But
I just think it's.
to answer, I think in an engineering format, we have, we're dropping down into the site to kind of alleviate some of the grade. There is a bench right along the road, so we're taking advantage of that with the building and parking. But we will drop down into the parking, so the parking will be set down a little bit, and then we'll have a little swale and potentially some retaining on that north edge where it drops down a little steeper by the bike path. And so we might have some retaining wall on that north edge of the parking, but we'll play that by ear when we get into the final civil.
Yeah, my site plan doesn't have any contour. It's got the contours, but not any labeling of them, so it's.
We're trying not to use any retaining wall. What we'd actually like to do is use the positive soil balance that we've got on the site and actually be able to grade that up against the parking so that we can landscape against that edge.
Landscape boulders. Yeah, you will not see a retaining wall on the backside of the parking lot.
Interesting. Because there's, I mean, if those are 1 foot contours.
I think they're 2 foot.
I think they're 2 foot. And you drop 10 feet from back of sidewalk to the first, basically 100 feet.
Yeah. So at that north end, if those are 2 footers, then I still see about 20 feet of differential, so it's, you can have a retaining wall one side or uphill or downhill, or both. But I don't know, we'll wait for that for the next review. I'm sure it's solvable.
Actually, if I'm correct, I think the final review is a staff function. So, but it will include the engineering considerations.
Correct.
Any other questions?
Well, I would just like to ask a question that you mentioned the solar, and I know the mayor mentioned it in your earlier approval, and I was just curious what the plans were for that type of stuff.
So right now we're engineering on the MEPs with the mechanical, electrical, plumbing. So we're looking at, we're basically looking at that as what's possible. Part of what we have to do is design the mechanical system and then see what we have for roof space up there, because we'll have some level of equipment that'll be on the roof, and then depending on the restaurants that come in, whether they have hoods and how we, how we basically vent those spaces are going to be coming out as well. So our desire is to be able to do solar. I mean, that would be, I think, a positive thing for this project, and would fit with what we're trying to do here. And then it just comes down to logistics and cost, how we offset that.
Great.
With this type of plan that you referred to with different operators, what are your plans for signage?
Well, as the developer, as much as possible, but knowing that there are signed requirements and we have to get an approval, what we'll probably do is what we like to do is a master sign plan. Something that, the key is going to be visible from 16550, so that, this is not just something that locals are going to hopefully frequent, but we're going to be able to capture traffic coming from the airport and people coming into Durango. So we're working on the branding side of what the project is right now, and then working on a sign plan that we put together with the master sign plan and go back to DRB.
Okay.
To get full approval for that. Probably using the vertical elements in some way, so that we can, have visibility to the roadway. But again, understanding that there's limitations to what we can have.
Could you, these drawings are very small on my little dealie here. Could you point out where your recycling and your trash receptacles will go?
Those are all the way on the south end of the south parking lot.
You look at the screen, I think it shows the cursor.
Yeah.
Bouncing around.
Down in there? Okay, all right, thank you.
And then I was just also curious about your hours of operation possibly, or how those.
Well, it'll be a full, on the restaurant side, it'll be on a full 3 meal So we'll have coffee. It'll be one of the tenants, coffee, bakery, breakfast type deal. So, my assumption is they'll open it sometime around 7, 6:30 or 7, and we'll have the tap room. So that'll bring us through the lunch hour and into the evening. We'll probably evolve the evening hours depending on what demand calls for. Quite honestly, it's, I see the initial capturing of traffic is going to be in the lunch hour. We'll probably have a strong daytime, and we'll have to build the nighttime overtime. Because we're kind of in between really the dense residential of what's in Durango and around the corner in Three Springs.
I had one further question about the roof, and subject to the solar panels, which would possibly obviate the whole issue. But I wondered whether the decision around a black roof considered the impact of solar heating or reflection from the color of the roof and how that averages out over the year. I think in the summertime you'd rather not have a black roof. In this wintertime maybe you do, and I don't. Although in the wintertime you might also be covered with white anyway. So the thrust of my question is what's the most energy efficient choice?
I'll take that. Durango has more heating days than cooling days. So actually the absorption of the black roof would be better, but the system would preclude that because we'll have insulation between, basically on the top of the roof. Yeah. So being that this is almost a rural setting, we're not gonna really see any heat island effect. If we were in a city with asphalt and lots of roofs, then I'd be more concerned. But in this environment, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. Yeah. Really.
Yeah,
the energy efficiency is really moving.
It's not really, the color of the roof isn't going to impact the overall energy use of the building.
Right.
Solar panels could do that a lot in terms of the net load on the grid.
Correct.
The
bigger factor there would be overhangs and south exposure for windows.
Yeah, and I did observe the passive solar characteristics of the design, and I do like that. You know where I'm coming from about solar panels. So, yep. I really hope that will work out to be part of the final project.
You have to open the public hearing.
Yes. Okay. Any members of the public who wish to speak to this project? Seeing none, I will thank the applicants for their input for what it basically is a really interesting project. I think we're all, I know I'm going to be very interested in checking it out when you open.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
And any further comments from council?
Can't wait to ride my bike out at 7 in the morning. I might stay until 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, depending on the programming. So, awesome looking project. Excited about it.
Well, with that, Mayor, I will move to approve the Mercury Village Lot 4 preliminary development plan, subject to the findings and conditions of the Planning Commission as reflected in the Planning Commission staff report and minutes of January 22, and authorize the mayor to execute the Mylars upon completion of all final plating requirements.
Second.
May we have a roll call?
Councilor Patine?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Marbury?
Yes.
Councilor Brookie?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
And Mayor White?
Yes. The last hearing is going to be a public hearing to consider the Lake Nighthorse annexation and initial zoning. And I'm not quite sure which of the planners. Okay, I saw 2 planners walking into the front of the room, and I thought it was going to be Ms. Vandergrift.
Thank you, Mayor White and the council. I'm Vicki Vandergrift. I'm a planner with the City of Durango, and we're here tonight to talk about the Lake Knife Horse annexation. So this public hearing is to consider a request from the Bureau of Reclamation, who is the property owner, into annexation of a portion of a parcel of land they own of approximately 1,926.7 acres, owned by the BOR into the city, and it's commonly known as Lake Knife Horse. So the property is located, I think most people know, but it's located to the southwest of the city of Durango, and this is County Road 210, and that is what provides access to the lake. The annexation area is outlined in yellow, which might be a little hard to see, but it's basically the area around the lake. It's 25 feet buffer above high water mark, and it includes some areas to the east and to the north, up to County Road 210.
Bless you.
Just a couple pictures to remind everybody what we're annexing.
So pretty.
As for the background, was built as part of the Animas La Plata project. I think everyone knows that. It was to fulfill water rights settlements with the Ute Mountain Utes and the Southern Ute Indian tribes, and it was always sort of anticipated to have a recreational element. But in 2008, the Colorado State Parks declined to accept the development and management of the recreation of the lake. So there has been a number of studies that have been conducted recently. In 2010, there was an economic impact of recreation uses and then a recreation market assessment that were both completed. There was the draft recreation master plan that was completed in 2011. The city of Durango amended our comprehensive plans urbanizing area to include Lake Knife Horse in 2012. The environmental assessment about public recreation, the preliminary draft was completed in 2012. The final recreation plan was adopted finalized in 2014. And then the recreation plan final environmental assessment and finding of no significant impact was completed in December of 2016. So as for the facilities that exist, the state gave the Bureau of Rec a $3 million motorboat grant, access grant for construction of a boat ramp, parking areas, vault restroom, and the access road. And this construction was completed in 2013. Just a few pictures of all of those facilities that are in place. The city agreed to become the recreation provider, and so in January of last year, the city and the Bureau reached a lease agreement so that the city would become the administrator of the recreation area. So the annexation is proposed because the city has agreed to assume the responsibility to manage the recreation facilities, and as a part of that, the city wants to have the city police department provide law enforcement in the area. And to do that, the city needs to annex the property into the city limits, so the police department has jurisdiction. Again, the area is just under 2,000 acres. It's part of a 5,500 acre parcel that the Bureau owns. It includes the lake and the buffer and the area that we discussed earlier. And that area, the high water mark elevation is 6,883 feet. So we know what the high water mark is, and then the city will annex 25 feet above that. Here's another map that just shows it a little more schematically as to what is the annexation area. It might be a little easier to see. So annexation, we have state laws that we must follow to annex a property into the city limits. The first is contiguity, and contiguity, it refers to that a minimum of 1/6 of the property must be contiguous with the existing city limits. But state law also has a interesting part that allows you to ignore federal and state lands when you're determining contiguity. So this is also how we annex Three Springs. The GIS department did look at this and came up and concluded that the city is contiguous with 20% or 1/5 of the lake. Therefore, we do meet the contiguity. Annexation requirements also include community interest. And the area proposed for annexation is within our city's comprehensive plan. It's within the urbanizing area. The comprehensive plan addresses it, and it is capable of being integrated into the city. So therefore, it does, a community interest has been shown through our plan. There's a mileage limitation in state law that you can't annex more than 3 miles from existing city limits in 1 year. And so, but it also has a caveat to that. So 3 miles is approximately right in this area, but the state law also says that if all of the property is one parcel and the majority of it is within that 3 mile boundaries, then you are able to annex the entire thing, the entire property. So that is how the 3 mile is being met. Plan in place, that's the city's comprehensive plan. It was adopted again, in our newest version was adopted in 2017, and it does address annexation of this property. Petition, the Bureau of Rec did submit a petition for annexation. The council accepted that petition in October of last year, and they are the only property owner involved. And then an annexation impact report, the county did request an annexation impact report. The city delivered it to them at the end of December and at the end of January. So that was done. You had a copy of the annexation impact report attached to your agenda documentation, and the county has been given a copy of the report per state statute. Serviceability is one of the things that we have to look at with annexations. This annexation is a lot different than some of the others that we have done, because the only thing that we're proposing to provide is recreation, operate and manage the recreation facilities, and then law enforcement. So no other services are being proposed. So there's no water or sewer extension or transit or anything else going to be serviced in this property. The initial zoning is being proposed as public, and we've determined that was the appropriate zone because of the proposed uses, which are the recreation uses, but then also some of the water storage issues and uses of the property, and then also acknowledging the ownership of the lake, which is still Bureau of Reclamation. We do need to make sure it adheres to the city's comprehensive plan. So as I mentioned before, we already amended our urbanizing boundaries in 2012 to set this up. We do have objectives about parks and rec facilities and providing a vast number of different opportunities to the community. And then finally, policy 21.2.12 is to develop and manage recreation facilities in collaboration with the Bureau of Reclamation for public use at Lake Knife-Horse. So in summary, the annexation has been contemplated for a number of years since we did the urbanizing boundary, although not decided upon, but we were sort of set up to annex it in the future if necessary. And I think it's important that we understand that we're doing this mainly so that we can open up the lake itself with the recreation facilities and then have the police protection, which is really the key piece. So with that, the Planning Commission did hear this item on October 23rd, and there was no public testimony at that hearing. The Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval. The fiscal impacts have already been addressed in the fiscal impact report that you received, and most importantly in your budget deliberations last year, where you actually approved the money for this year's budget to operate the lake. In addition to that, the comprehensive plan goals I've already gone over, and so it is the recommendation of the city manager and the Planning Commission that the City Council by motion approve the Lake Knife-Horse annexation and PB zoning subject to the findings and conditions outlined in the Planning Commission staff report, and direct the city attorney to prepare an annexation and initial zoning ordinance for first reading at the next City Council meeting.
Is there any questions from the council for Ms. Vandergrift? I actually have two. One is whether it's only been 2 or at most 3 weeks, so I assume you have received no comments from La Plata County.
Actually, at 4 o'clock today, I got a call and have been invited to go to a workshop tomorrow to talk about the annexation impact report, and so I will be present there. I'm able to do that. Kathy Metz, who would also be good to go. Can't make that meeting, so I'm going to suggest that maybe we have another meeting if they have questions about operations that she can attend.
Okay, thank you. And the other, one of the things that occurred to me as I was going through the documentation, there are jagged boundaries both for this property and for the existing city limits, and I was wondering how one deals with the matching up the boundaries of the existing boundaries of the city with the boundaries of the proposed annexation.
What the GIS, let me go back. I'm sure.
Yeah, I know that you did have that slide.
I did. Run back and grab it so you can see it. Have to give it right there. So what the GIS department did is they measured, they found areas that there was only federal or state land between the boundaries of the lake and the city limits, and then they drew their lines. I think actually in some ways this is conservative. I think if you change some of your directions of your line arrows, you might actually get a bigger number. And then they actually measured both. They measured the entire lake, and then they measured the entire areas that they showed where there was nothing between the lake and that portion, and they did it with math, and then that's where the number came from.
It's not quite obvious when you get pieces that jot down in between. So
right.
I certainly trust the staff to have done that appropriately, but it seemed like worthwhile to ask the question.
No, and we're actually over what's required by state law. If it was really close, I think we'd have a much more detailed map.
I bet. Thank you. At this point, I will thank staff and
if I could just really quick, we have Kathy Metz is here to answer any questions about any questions you might have, and we also have the Bureau of Record here.
Okay.
Answer any questions.
All right. Thank you. At this point, I will open the public testimony on the meeting. Invite the Bureau if they wish to add anything to the staff report. And seeing nobody jumping up to do that, we'll invite comments from the public. And I would ask each speaker to give your name and address when you get up to the podium.
My name is Howard Mulcahy, 1648 Heritage Way, or Heritage Road in Hesperus. I'm right at the end of the lake to the west. I'm also the president of the Trappers Crossing Homeowners Association. And, well, personally, I don't understand the full implications of annexation. I understand the rationale being given here. Our concerns are more of what is the implication of annexation in the future for not just the immediate area around around Lake Nighthorse, but for the residents that are in very close proximity to Lake Nighthorse. It is our opinion that the residents in close proximity to Lake Nighthorse would suffer any negative consequences, the risks of fire, of other economic consequences of things going wrong or things that slip through the planning process. So, we're just concerned citizens. We want to make sure that property values for those that live near the lake are sustained or maintained or not impaired in any way because of either the use of County Road 211, traffic on 210, and obviously the noise and negative consequences of the public being in close proximity to our homes.
Thank you.
Any other comments, anybody?
Well, I guess, I'll come up. I just have one comment. In this proposal for, my name is
Could
Sherry
you
Bowman.
give us your name and address?
Sherry Bowman. I live at 309 Powderhorn Trail in Hesperus. I am part of Trappers Crossing HOA. I also sit on the board of the Trappers Crossing Homeowners Association. We invited the Recreation Department to come and make a presentation to our residents at our annual meeting in January, the 25th. At that time, we had provided a preset list of questions to Kathy Metz, and she had time to develop, those responses so that she could address the concerns that Trappers residents had. The very first question was there a plan to open up County Road 211 for access to the lake? And we were told no, there is no plan in 2018. I have to say that in all of the answers that Kathy gave, she always preferenced it by saying in 2018. And a lot of us were concerned because what does that mean then on January 1, 2019? Does the answer change? For County Road 211, in case you don't know, that county road was previously open all the way to where the BOR property begins. And that length of road is bordered by our private residence property on both the north and the south side of County Road 211. There was a problem with people going down the county road, drinking, throwing bottles, dumping refrigerators, mattresses. I mean, it was really a big problem. This happened several years ago, and the HOA at the time approached the county to ask them to block that section of road. Since there was really no reason for anybody to go down there, there was no access to the lake, it was really only our property that people could get to. And so the county did. They put in a second gate, which is further west of where the BOR gate is. So there is about a mile and a half section of County Road 211 that has really not been maintained. We do get quite a bit of traffic still coming. People come in to walk their dog. They'll walk up to the BOR gate where it says, there's a $5,000 penalty if you trespass, so they usually don't go beyond that. And people cross-country ski, and that's okay. They're not driving vehicles. They're not dumping a whole lot, although I always, when I walk my dogs, carry a bag with me to pick up trash along the way, which still happens. So we have a history with 211 being open and it being a problem for our neighborhood. At our annual meeting, we were told no, 211 is not under consideration in 2018. Less than 1 week later, one of our representatives was attending an ALP board meeting, and it was at the request of the Recreation Department that the tribe was asked to allow the west end of the lake to be open and actually a boat ramp built on that end of the lake for emergency vehicles. They wanted both the county boat and the city's boat, which they are borrowing from the Bureau of Rec, to be located on that end of the lake. It was less than a week after we were told no. So you can understand why there is some concern. You are proposing today to just annex around the border of the lake 25 feet. But tomorrow, are you going to want to annex 211 to be able to get your public safety vehicles in there? And what kind of traffic is this going to bring to our homeowners who have property that abut 211? So again, we really want to make sure that you understand that this is a major concern. A lot of us feel that because this is being annexed to the city and we're not city residents, we won't necessarily have a vote in how that's done. We can't vote for those of you that might be more sensitive to our needs. So we need to have a place at the table with regard to the planning of the lake, and in particular on that west end where it is a no-wake zone. I think Councilor Marbury, you had at one point in one of the meetings suggested that maybe we should consider opening the west end access so that people in the no-wake zone don't have to go from the far east all the way to the west end. So see, there's already rumbling about the potential development occurring on the west end of the lake. So we just wanted to make our wishes known, that we want to be at the table, we want to be a partner in making sure that whatever comes up as a use of the lake, that those of us who have property that is directly, in contact with 211 and access to it would have a place at the table. Okay. Any questions?
Actually, I had one, and I want to make sure I understand correctly. The issues that you've had with people using 211 and dumping and being a real nuisance come after the closing of the highway to fill the reservoir.
Yes, County Road 211 actually goes underneath and is
Yeah.
at the bottom of Lake Nighthorse. So for a period of time, and maybe I can show you, for a period of time, the road is actually right in here.
Yeah.
211 comes in here. So out, I don't know, maybe a mile or so from that is a gate. And that is the gate that the BOR put in to close off the lake and all of its land. And that was the only gate that was there for a long period of time. And then we started noticing the problems with people dumping on our property and that. And then there was a request made by a former HOA board to the county to put in a secondary gate there to eliminate that traffic.
So basically, it was traffic that especially developed after the road was blocked off.
Yes.
So people could kind of go down the end of the road
Yeah,
and.
it was a dead end with,
party.
they could park and do whatever they wanted. And we've been picking up trash ever since, and there are some huge there's a refrigerator back there that nobody can get to. I don't know how they got it dumped back there because it's beyond an arroyo, but we haven't been able to get it out of there yet. But
And we've experienced mail theft as well, from
Yeah.
mailboxes and trappers. But the mailboxes are in close proximity to the second gate that Sherry mentioned. But anyways, it's public, it's a problem of dealing with the public.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank you for bringing these concerns forcefully to the council. We understand the fact that you are outside of the city, and yet you would, could be significantly impacted by the future choices that the city makes there. And, you are on the record.
Okay.
And certainly, this is something that's likely to evolve over a number of years, but at least of the people on the dais, there are at least 3 who will be here for 3 more years.
Okay.
And hopefully, and also the staff is, staff longevity is greater than that. So I think we appreciate your input.
Thanks, sir. Just 2 more points. I had an exchange with Mr. Brookie, which better communicates our overall concerns.
Yeah, that also will be part of the record. I know for myself, I only had time today to sort of get the overall sense of the fact that you had some detailed comments there.
I appreciate that.
It's good to meet the person at the other end of the email.
It definitely is.
Right. And I also noticed that there was an impact report. Have we seen that? The annexation impact report, is that a public document?
No.
Yes. Yeah, it's in the agenda packet. You can find that online,
Perfect.
the agenda packet for tonight's meeting.
Okay, good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Howard, is this yours?
Any other members of the public who wish to speak to this issue? I should ask, Ms. Mess, do you have any additional comments that you want to offer?
Good evening, Mayor White and members of City Council. I just wanted to speak to one of the statements that Ms. Bowman made that was not correct. I did make a presentation to the La Plata Forum, and there was conversation about the east side of County Road 211, not the west side of County Road 211. The west side of County Road 211 is where Trappers Crossing is. The east side is where the entrance to Lake Nighthorse currently exists. And so we have been working with La Plata County Sheriff's Department. Their request with Durango Police Department is to have a dock at that location. This is the east side of County Road 211. That's very near the entrance to Lake Nighthorse that you travel in currently to get to the boat ramp. And that would provide a dock and a boat. The sheriff would like to stage one of the 4 boats that the sheriff's office has at Lake Nighthorse so that we can provide public safety emergency response, not only for the sheriff, Durango Police Department, and Durango Fire Protection District. So it's very important that the council understand there is not a dock planned or access plan for the west side adjacent to Trappers Crossing. I just wanted to make sure that everyone was clear about that.
In 2018.
That's correct.
But I think, in terms of that particular use, which is extremely important for the safety of the users of the lake, that access would be from the east end of the lake, not actually at the entrance station per se, but from is that visible on the map that would help us all?
It is. Ethan has a really nice map, but I don't think we can project this. And so
we can just pass it around.
we can.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pass around. This is Ethan Scott with the Bureau of Reclamation. And Ethan and I have worked very closely together on all the issues related to Lake Nighthorse. But what the map illustrates is the emergency personnel dock on the east side, and the location of that, which is where you currently drive into Lake Nighthorse. You can go down the boat ramp road or the old County Road 211 that dead ends into the lake on the east.
Okay, that's a very, very helpful clarification.
Kathy, can you put the cursor where that boat ramp would be?
Let's see if I can find the cursor. Oops, did you see it?
Yeah. Now you've done it.
Ah, there it is. I see it here.
It's like a Ouija board.
What's that one? Okay.
I think one of the maps does show the entire east side that'll be opened up. And both of these maps, just so you know, they'll be available at the recreation meetings next week.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, if I could.
You know that public can't hear us.
So if you would come back to the podium.
For just a minute. I appreciate the clarification, and I guess I can say that I'm absolutely elated to hear that what you mentioned was the east side of County Road 211. The east side of County Road 211 is down in the lake. You access the Lake Nighthorse off County Road 210, right? And I think you did say 211 again. So maybe that is where our person misunderstood, because it was referenced that it was County Road 211. We live off County Road 211. County Road 210 is the county road that runs on the northern edge of the lake from Bodo all the way out to Wildcat Canyon. Okay, so thank you, I appreciate the clarification.
Ms. Metz, before you sit down, there was a lot of discussion the last time we talked about Lake Nighthorse relative to County Road 211 and reasons that was not going to open at this time in 2018. And I thought maybe just briefly, if you could kind of remind me of what that discussion was and why that was.
We are not annexing that portion of County Road 211 to the west, and so there would need to be a process involved in the annexation of that area so that we can provide appropriate law enforcement. And as Ms. Bowman mentioned in her statements to the council, there is a gate, or a series of 2 gates, that really leaves a portion of that road from the Trappers Crossing or west side unmaintained, and so there would need to be improvements to that road. There would also need to be probably a parking area created and a way to prevent boats from being launched with the boat ramp on the west side. We have to inspect all boats that go into Lake Nighthorse following Colorado Parks and Wildlife regulations. And so we would not want a boat ramp that was unregulated on the west side of the lake.
And yes, I did make statements that I would like to see County Road 211 opened up for the quiet lake. And I hope that we can go through a process, because I think that would help. The west side is dedicated just to quiet lakes. And so yes, I do support that in the future. And I think actually when you have a dead end, it invites more vandalism perhaps. I can testify that I live at the end of the alley, and I'm very watchful because it is at the end of the alley as opposed to an alley that flows, that I find that more beneficial. So I think that when that process happens, I will be so delighted, and so will the people who like to paddleboard on the quiet lake, and that you will see a huge improvement in your neighborhood. I don't think it'll be a detriment at all when that happens. And it's logical to me. And one more comment before I stop. And council's heard it before. I went to the very first meeting in 1976 about the Animas La Plata project. I had no idea I would be sitting here getting ready to annex this into the city of Durango. I think it's thrilling. I can remember these conversations very clearly about land around the lake and what a benefit it would be for those particular homeowners. I think your property value will increase. Every place that I've ever seen that has been on a lakefront, those are high dollars. So I really feel like your property values will be going up in the future, not being lowered by all. So that's been my experience. I have family that live on a lake, and I can testify to that about the property values of living on a lake, and also the benefit. So I understand that you were born in 1977.
That's right.
And so we had a conversation before council. So I'm so happy that he's here. And I'm really happy that I get to be a witness to history. So there you go.
If it's all right, I wouldn't mind adding, it would be a public process if we were able to open up the west side, just so you know. It is also a wildlife corridor that was identified in one of our environmental impact statements, so we would have a process to go through with Fish and Wildlife Service, Parks and Wildlife, and as well as we would have to do a consultation with both the State Historic Preservation Office and the Tribal Historic Preservation Offices. So it would be a process in our...
Of course, everything is a process when it comes to government. Everything is a process.
And when you have 7 governments attached to the O&M Association, the negotiations are extended.
But just to be, in good faith, I mean, that is at this point, is not part of any documented plan. That this, to do what you're asking, Councilor Marbury. So, I mean, that would be the result of a process, and quite honestly, part of this potential compromise or whatever, if we're all, if it's part motorized, part non-motorized, then that might be a solution to look at that opportunity, but right now it's not part of our management plan at all. That's fair to say. That's fair to say.
And as we've heard in earlier meetings, changes in the management plan engage this whole complicated apparatus that has taken us a long time to get this far. So those of us who are over 40 may not make it.
I am curious about the legal status of County Road 211 on either side.
I think that's all of us.
Yeah. Slipped right by me.
Right.
I am curious about the legal status of County Road 211 as it goes through Trappers Crossing. I mean, did the county ever abandon the rights or use of that, except for the things that you documented?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of as well.
So it is a public right-of-way, in which case, if there was a use described, it would not need to be annexed. The city wouldn't annex a road that's already a public right-of-way. So I don't see, personally, I don't see a fear of further annexation by the city. You know, kind of a rolling annexation into Trappers Crossing. I don't think is what I envision anyway, dividing, and but I think it is a public right-of-way. That's probably pretty clear, so. Subject to all the things you were talking about, the wildlife corridor and those kinds of issues, so. Okay, I'm happy.
I did have one question, and that concerned the entrance station and the staffing there. Thinking, going through the documentation prompted me to think about some things that didn't come up when we were discussing the staffing during the budget process, and that is the who, day in and day out, who is going to be responsible for staffing the entrance station. My supposition is that's most likely to be part-time workers. And I just want to stress, which I'm sure you understand, because we've got state regulations that allow us to get boats in here, but only under these strict conditions. I think it only to underscore the importance of very careful training and attentiveness by the staff who are working the entrance station.
So if I might, Mayor White, the 2018 budget includes 3 full-time employees. We have hired 2 of those employees, and the 3rd is underway. And then, of course, there will be multiple part-time employees. We've already reached out to Colorado Parks and Wildlife to schedule the Aquatic Nuisance Species Inspector Program class for certification, and that will be held for our staff in April. And so in terms of the training, we understand the importance of water quality at Lake Nighthorse and the importance of us following all state standards. And so whether it is a full-time employee or a part-time employee that will be conducting those inspections, they will be certified and following all necessary requirements.
I'm delighted to hear that. Because these are issues that have been raised repeatedly through this entire process, and the attentiveness to detail on that is simply imperative.
I can assure you all members of the association share your concerns, and probably some of them have even bigger concerns about aquatic invasives as well as water quality. And reclamation is right there with you. So it's one of our main concerns up there.
And we know that McPhee has had a stringent program, and that they, I saw a report that they don't have any problems after boat inspections.
Yep.
Mayor, I want to compliment Kathy Metz. I got on city council in 2011, and she's been going to these meetings faithfully, representing the city. We all have been to Lake Nighthorse. Councilor Berkey and I, when I was mayor, went over to Toyoak and met with the Southern Ute Tribe and the Ute Mountain Tribe. And I've been over to Toyoak many times to meet with them. And Ms. Metz always has a smile on her face, no matter what is going on. And she handles it beautifully as a representative for the city of Durango. So I really want to compliment you. You carried a lot on your shoulders for years. And here's the payoff, baby. Here's the payoff. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Kathy Metz or Ethan Scott, sorry. Okay, I believe we have not closed the public hearing, so there's one last chance for any member of the public to step forward at this time. Otherwise, I will close the public hearing and ask for any additional comments from council.
Okay, then it's my turn. I move to approve the Lake Nighthorse annexation and PB zoning. Wow, this is important. Subject to the findings. Gosh, I got all emotional. Outlined the Planning Commission staff report and direct the city attorney I can't even finish. To prepare the annexation and initial zoning ordinance for first reading at the next city council meeting. Oh my God.
Second.
Woohoo!
Good job.
May we have a roll call?
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Marbury?
Yes.
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Councilor Brookie?
Yes.
And Mayor White?
Yes. We have one final piece of business tonight. This is an administrative issue being brought by Kevin Hall. This is discussion and possible action concerning a lease option agreement between the City of Durango and Housing Solutions of the Southwest for property to be used for a permanent supportive housing project.
Good evening, councilors. We'll shift gears a little bit here. As you know, the city's been working with a number of agencies and organizations over the last certainly several months, but really going back a number of years in terms of trying to find alternatives to develop housing for low-income or homeless folks in need. And what we have before you tonight is a proposed option, it's an option lease agreement, which essentially gives Housing Solutions of the Southwest an opportunity to potentially lease a little over an acre of land up at the social services campus. Currently, they have a facility up there now. It's relatively small and it doesn't necessarily utilize the space that's available up there, although it's a very valuable asset to the community. But there's an opportunity here to develop a 30 to 40 unit permanent supportive housing project. And if you recall from last year, we had lots of conversations about a senior housing project out in Three Springs. While different, would be using similar type funding opportunities, which is low-income housing tax credits. And Housing Solutions of the Southwest, and Elizabeth Selkind is here. She's the executive director. I've been working with a developer, national developer of these type of facilities. It seems to be that we're lining out to have a developer interested in pursuing the tax credits that would allow for the construction of this project. In order to do that, they have to have site control for the property in order to move forward. As you know, this is a city-owned parcel up on the social services campus. And what ultimately the option allows is it gives the developer and Housing Solutions essentially 2 years to align with the tax credit application and funding, as well as have a development proposal brought forward to the city that would go through the typical review processes with our community development department. This mirrors very much what we did last year with the VOA project in Three Springs, which unfortunately didn't get funded at the time. They'll likely come back as well at some point, but they're under a situation where they have a couple of years to kind of get their project in alignment with what needs to happen here in order for it to move forward. So in this case, what is really necessary is a long-term lease on the property, but in the interim, because there is a lot of steps and uncertainty, the city staff, in talking with the proponents as well as with other staff and council in the past, talked about doing an option lease agreement first, rather than just doing an outright lease. This option lease agreement, if the LIHTC project comes together, if a development proposal comes together with the community development process, we would essentially fold the existing site that Housing Solutions has into this site for a lease that would essentially lease the entirety of the property to Housing Solutions. If in fact the option lease agreement expires because of a lack of success, essentially the existing lease for Housing Solutions wouldn't be impacted by that. So they could continue operating up there under the current scenario that they have and continue to evolve the program the way they continue to do. So this seems like a good first step to move the project forward in a manner that doesn't do a final commitment on the part of the city, but essentially shows the commitment on the part of the city that's necessary to move into an actual lease of the property. And the lease would ultimately be 99 years. So essentially, for all intents and purposes, it's a transfer of the land long-term. There would be restrictions on future use of the property because that is such a long time. But that property would ultimately have to be used for purposes very similar to what we're talking about here. It couldn't be sold to a private developer or used for market rate housing. It would continue to be used. There'll be a lot more details that will come in the future when we talk about the project, when we talk about an actual lease. But the idea here is that ultimately Housing Solutions of the Southwest would be the owner of the property after the developer comes in with the low-income housing tax credits. and manages the project for a certain term. And certainly, if you want more details relative to the project, we can talk about those tonight. Maybe Elizabeth could step to the plate. But I think really the germane component of what we're talking about now is an option lease agreement that will set the stage for a developer application with Housing Solutions for a LIHTC application that would go in late spring, early summer, and then notification of whether funding is available and awarded in the fall. Under that scenario, you'd still probably need 6 to 9 months to do development review on a project like this, because there's going to be a lot of additional steps that you wouldn't typically see of just a market rate project. So if you work this forward, it's a couple of years before we would see a project on the site. But again, the staff is recommending approval of the option lease agreement to take that first step towards moving this forward. Unless you have questions, that's what I have.
I do. Under the option term, if they don't get the tax credit project going by June of 2020, it says that this is terminated. And we all know that sometimes, as you just stated, projects don't get those tax credits, and I'm concerned about that because I think this is a very worthy project.
Well, the idea behind that, Councilman Barberry, would be that we'll, 2-year commitment, 2 tries at the LIHTC. If it doesn't work out after the second year, we revisit. I don't think I haven't sensed any opposition from this council or other staff or anyone that we wouldn't want to revisit the matter. But what it doesn't do, this doesn't create a long-term tie-up of the project, because we don't know in 2 years what this thing might look like. Someone else might step forward, a different developer might be in place, Housing Solutions might have some different ideas, so we would revisit the matter at that point.
I think that's appropriate, actually, quite honestly. It's if a project gets turned down twice, they've got 2 tries at this, and if a project gets turned down twice, it's probably for not reasons that we can address. It's probably a developer problem or something like that needs to change to make it come into compliance with something that would be funded. So, I think that, and we, another council would have the opportunity to extend that very, very simply, I would think. And but I think if it gives them 2 shots at it, and if they were able to get this thing designed or far enough along to get it into the June 1st this round, you could be under construction next spring if it in that quickly. But maybe they might not be that far along in their deal yet. But clearly it's a. I think this is a good interim kind of thing. It's not the lease. We're not giving it away yet. It's only conditional upon their success, and I wish them success. So.
Absolutely.
Well, we kind of are giving it away, right? And that's my question is the option, the way I read the option, the lease is for 99 years, and as long as the applicant exercises their option, the lease is granted. The terms there's not much to negotiate when you're giving a lease that doesn't have any payment involved in it, so it would be hard to imagine there's much negotiation going on there. So explain that to me. I guess that's really kind of my question. If we agree to this option, that gives this applicant those 2 years to obtain that LIHTC funding, and if they should do so, then that lease would go into effect. There's not we could not get out of that as a city. There would not be an option.
So the lease is a separate document. So what ends up in that lease would really be a matter of negotiation at the time, but I think the expectations here is pretty clear. The intent is to put a permanent supportive housing project on here that has 30 to 40 units.
Sure.
We don't charge other leases really anything substantive up there right now. Maybe token just to make the actual leases work. So we weren't intending to charge for use of the property long-term, but what we would get is a multi-million-dollar facility built that would provide some of the housing for the folks in need at only really the value of the land, which is currently tied up in one large parcel on the social services campus. It would be a fairly difficult property to parse off as a development parcel.
Sure. My question isn't relevant to the idea that I don't support the project by any means, but my point is correct, right? That this option is not, that you can't recall the option once it's signed.
They need solid proof of their ability to acquire the property to move forward with their application. So that is correct. As long as they fulfill their side of the obligation, get funding, and actually move forward to build something, then we would be obligated to lease the property to them. That's correct.
So that kind of leads me to my next question, which is that in the course of the conversations we've had about this particular part of our community relative to the need for this facility, it has come up that there may have been other locations potentially available to this particular entity, Housing Solutions. I believe the executive director even mentioned at a recent meeting that they looked at Three Springs at some point in time. Should, during the process of this LIHTC funding application, either the entity or the city itself deem there to be a better parcel or something like that, how would that work in this option process?
In this case, we're talking about this parcel. There wouldn't be alternative sites forward through the LIHTC application. We're talking about this parcel. So you kind of set the wheels in motion on the site. We have developers interested. Housing Solutions is interested. We're interested in this site. There's already been some preliminary work done by a different developer a number of years back who was interested in working with the Regional Housing Alliance on this site. Obviously, it impacted Housing Solutions as well, so they would have been part of it as well. But we already have a concept that we know that will likely play itself out with more engineering and design work. You don't go to the state with multiple sites. You'll have to pick your site and pick your developer. They'll probably have done some pre-development work that allows them to make a solid case for the funding. But as far as I know, and certainly you can invite Elizabeth up here to ask her about other sites, but this is the only one we're focusing in on for this project.
Might add that the history of the previous development too. I mean, we were here about probably 4 years ago, and there was there was interviews and whatnot, and the developer was selected by Regional Housing Alliance. And then the thing that tubed that project was probably our hesitation to enter into a long-term lease. And at this particular item that you've noticed was the crux of why we don't have that project today, probably. And that was, we've learned a lot in this 4 years and how these deals work and why it's important to offer city, and it's become more incumbent on municipalities to participate in these types of projects, and thus the 99-year lease. But it is important to have a particular site, and if that doesn't work out, or even if it does work out, I'd like to explore as many other sites for this particular kind of housing. This is only 38, 40 units, and we know what we need, which is more than that. So if there are other sites become available, I think we should explore other developers that can, could fulfill that need on alternative sites as well. So it's kind of the way I look at it, but it's a really good point. And this is the first time we have entered into a lease of this length, I think, probably. I don't, at least a few years ago.
Probably not since the golf course.
Okay, the golf course. Okay,
well, again, my
And the golf
question,
course is, there is a lesson there.
my questions are not relevant to the meaningfulness of this site or the opportunity present here. It's just really, truly to understand what I'm voting on. And make sure I understand this.
And I'm not totally sure I still do completely understand, because I have the same questions. So just to confirm, it's this long-term lease for 99 years is contingent upon the successful completion of the low-income housing type, of that application over the next 2 years.
The lease comes after the conditions are met. So there would have to be an approved application for LIHTC funding. The development proposal would have to be submitted, reviewed, and approved by the city. At that point, what you would see is the project is there, and the option lease agreement would pretty much say, okay, you've met the conditions of the option. Therefore, we go into a lease. The lease document has not been prepared, but essentially the The primary components of that lease would be a 99-year commitment to maintain the property for the purposes intended. There's probably a number of other things that will come. So this just sets the stage saying, hey, we'll give you a lease if you meet these requirements. As opposed to, if we just did a lease today and let's say things just fell apart, then essentially we would have to pass the property on to another entity without any certainty that it was going to get used for the purpose that we were,
So it's
intending
not,
at the time.
it's not just approval of low-income housing tax credits, but it's also the approval of development plans for the permanent supportive housing project, is that correct?
Correct.
So it's both.
Well,
So we would know that it's all going forward and it would be
Right.
developed.
And this option lease agreement was worked out both with the city staff, city attorney, as well as the developer and Housing Solutions and their attorneys. So I think there's a comfort level with taking this approach rather than just jumping right into a lease. That would be uncertain. You wouldn't want to condition the lease on certain things happening. I think we're far better having an option agreement that sets the stage for a lease agreement.
And again, this is essentially the same, the document is different because we use a different form, but this is essentially the same agreement that we had reached on the property in Three Springs. It also didn't require any consideration, and it's still in effect. I think they have another bite at that apple.
That's right.
Option.
They had, I think it was 2
I
years.
think
That's right.
the slight difference here is the property in Three Springs was a standalone parcel, and the intent would be to transfer the parcel and ownership to the VOA under very similar conditions. In this case, our social services campus, I don't know the exact acreage, but all of those facilities up there, it's one parcel of land. It includes Rusa, includes the other road coming up the hill. So the intent would not be to subdivide that off, but rather just do a lease like we've done with the other agencies up there.
And with the lease at Three Springs, is it intended to be 99 years if approved?
No, as Mr. Hall just pointed out, that's technically a conveyance because it's a separate piece of property that can be conveyed.
Okay.
So, but effectively, when
Okay.
you give somebody a 99-year lease, it's sort of the same thing.
Maybe one of the primary important factors here is the fact that there's no cost in the property to the developer and in this case, Housing Solutions. So it makes the property much more likely to be successful. It also is much more attractive to the state of Colorado when you look at things like low-income housing tax credits.
One other question, sorry, Councilor Murphy. If in this option lease agreement, you speak directly about permanent supportive housing and the goal towards that, if they're not successful or I'm just wondering how that, if in any way that property may ultimately want to be used for different, if it's not successful and it might want to be used for a different type of housing, like you mentioned, market rate housing, or I don't know how permanent supportive housing, but that definition includes and excludes, for example, transitional housing. I don't know along the continuum of care, how that helps. And I'm wondering what
The intention is broad here in terms of where we would head with this, but the exact purpose of the option lease is to provide some flexibility moving forward so that if the project evolves a little bit, well, we have that conversation. But we do it before we just lease the property off for 99 years, which is essentially a conveyance. None of us are going to be here then. So we want to just be certain that the project comes together as the council and the community desires and staff feel is appropriate before we release the acre .08 to Housing Solutions of the Southwest. I think we have confidence that they have a good team. I've met with that team. Certainly Elizabeth has been at this a while. She knows the system as well, and I feel like we have a real opportunity here to put something good on the ground on that property. And 4 years ago, the time might not have been right, but I think there's been a lot that has occurred in the last 4 years that makes the time much better, but we still feel it's important that we condition before we release the property in the lease that we get all the pieces put together before we do that.
I think a key issue here is 99 years is a very, very long time. We experienced the fact that 50 years ago, the city council leased the golf course to the club that operates it with free untreated water. And we probably would not do that again today. So I think a key aspect of the ultimate lease is to provide some conditions on saying it is conceivable that future, the future uses that we will have solved our housing problems in the next, let's say, 30 years, being really optimistic. And suddenly the idea of a permanent supportive housing facility is no longer needed as a supplement to our housing program. In that case, I would trust the staff, particularly the city attorney, in negotiating with the Housing Solutions and with the developer, that you would make suitable contingencies in the lease so that if in 30 or 40 years things really change, everybody has a suitable option to say there's a better, higher and better, best use that we acknowledge. I can't remember, Ms. Salkin will be coming up momentarily, I expect. I know her organization's been in existence for a long time, and I have every expectation that the need for this facility will outlive me. And so these are hypotheticals, but one of the really hard things about this kind of a 99-year commitment is that you have to indulge in some consideration of the hypotheticals, and really appreciate and I trust the diligence of the staff in terms of trying to imagine and making sure that everyone is treated well and that future options can come forward as most appropriate. Dean, you had something else you were going to say?
Yeah, the great comments, Dick. The difference. I just want to point out the difference, as Dirk did, about Three Springs. The city's commitment to essentially give away a parcel, fee simple to VOA in that case, versus up near Manna, it's the social services campus, and we're organizing a lease, ultimately a 99-year lease. The difference is because that whole social services campus cannot be subdivided easily. It can be subdivided, but it can, the road's too steep for city standards. All the things that we would defeat a proposed subdivision with, planning regulation-wise, do not exist up at the social services campus. So that's why we have to lease this to them for 99 years instead of conveying it pure and simple to the low-income housing tax credit developer, which is, this is a type of low-income housing tax credit. And so it's no different really than VOA in terms of what we're trying to do. Because we have the internal problem of not being able to subdivide that property is why we're leasing it instead of conveying it outright, as we have done with the other properties. So I just want to make that distinction, that we're not trying, we would be giving it away, but for the fact that we can't subdivide that property is my thinking here. And that this is just an interim step. There's no, we've done these deals with just a letter of intent from the city, signed by the mayor, says it goes to Chaffa, and that's probably enough of a commitment on the city's part. This document protects the city for all those things that we're all concerned about, which is what happens if they are not successful, and how can we change this in 2 years if we need to. So I see it as a really appropriate document for this interim phase, and it's not the lease. And there's no lease to be signed until they are awarded these tax credits competitively, which is a once-a-year deal. So
I would also point out that it'd be typical to expect, because of this type of financing, that there would be strings attached to the financing, which would mean that they are obligated to maintain that property for that use. And we could also include similar provisions in terms of binding them to use it for a low-income purpose. And those are typical in those documents, as we would if we get around to deeding the property in Three Springs as well. We'd make sure that that's effectively, their uses are limited. As Kevin said, we're not going to let them turn around in 20 years and turn it into market rate condos, that will be protected.
Sure. Okay. I would thank Mr. Hall and ask Mrs. Falcon if she cares to make it, amend any of the conversation we've had.
No, I think you addressed all there's something about Laura. So,
Elizabeth, you have to go to the podium.
There's lots of restrictions other than what the
Please,
city would do.
you won't be caught on the audio, neither the video nor the audio unless you come up here.
I don't know if not being on the video is really plus or minus. There's lots of other restrictions.
Name and address.
Elizabeth Salkine,
Yeah.
209.
Elizabeth, could you give it, fill in your name and address, and then we're good.
Elizabeth Salkine, 209 East 37th, Durango. So the restrictions that would be placed on the property would be mostly from all the people that are providing the funding. So they're very extensive, they're very standard, but they're, 40 years at a minimum, and, and then they continue on from that point. So there's not an option to convert it to a completely different purpose, so to speak, with some very, very strange exceptions. But basically, the funding that's accepted puts into place some very strict rules and regs about what you can do, and that's how people providing the funding, they obtain tax credits in exchange for that. So it gets complicated, but you don't have a lot of control over changing its use, so to speak.
Right, sure. And I just want to say that if we've learned nothing else in the discussions we've had about homelessness, and it is that permanent supportive housing is clearly an essential component of, I remember more than 4 years ago, going to a session at National League of Cities, where I think it was the first time I'd heard about the concept, and subsequently at least one session at the Colorado Municipal League, documenting from, I think, Denver and Colorado Springs, huge savings in public money from reduced emergency room visits, reduced incarceration, reduced detox visits. And it's very, very clear, having been to those sessions, I say, okay, how can we scale this down to Durango? And I'm delighted to see this project coming forward. And I'm definitely in favor of having it go forward. I think it would be a really significant piece in our overall approach to housing and homelessness in Durango.
I think the 2-year lease option is sufficient. I mean, you often are turned down your first round, but if you're turned on your second round, that's a sign that they want to see that project redeveloped, completely for some reason or another. But 2 years gives you a legitimate chance at putting it through the system to see, ultimately it's not up to this committee, but it'd be up to the, state folks on which priorities and who they select and which communities, some of which is very outside of our control. But 2 years, I think, is sufficient to see if we can get this done.
Great. Okay. Any other questions from council? No? Thank you so much for what you're doing and for bringing this proposal forward.
Go for it.
Are we ready for a motion? I think so. I'd like to make a motion to direct the city manager to execute the option to lease agreement with Housing Solutions of the Southwest for the 1.08 acres located on the social services campus.
Second.
And we have a roll call.
Counselor Youssef?
Yes.
Counselor Berkey?
Yes.
Counselor Patine?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Marbury?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. And that concludes the agenda for tonight. The time is 9:12, and I adjourn the meeting.
Nice.